It's Laura, and welcome back to another Cocoa Vanilla Studio layout. This one features the gorgeous October mood board that is absolutely perfect for the These Days collection. And so of course I dived right in, have these two super cute photos of my twins when they're actually pretending to like each other. Needless to say, like most sisters do, they tend to argue quite a bit. And so these sort of moments where they're all snuggly and cute and being sweet to each other are definitely photo and scrap worthy. Rare moment indeed. So I am using a cut file for this layout. This cut file is from Liz Longest Designs. She does pre-cut cut files on Etsy, and I really appreciate that because I don't have a silhouette machine. And this allows me to get to play with cut files. So I'm just showing you briefly how to go ahead and back a cut file if you've never done it before. These are simply digital designs that you use an electronic die cutting machine to cut out. They're a lot of fun to play with. They can make some really detailed backgrounds, and that's why I really enjoy using them from time to time. So I am just going to glue them down to this green 6x8 paper and then go ahead and trim them out. As you can see, I have just adhered the center ring to my background paper, and then I'm going to back it on this beautiful white cardstock for a nice clean crisp border. Now I do really like a white border on a pattern paper background. I think it just gives it a nice frame, and I think often your backgrounds need that when you use pattern paper because they can be a bit busy. Now I left this part in because I've had a couple of people request it. This is how I paper piece my backgrounds onto a cut out border. So I have gutted the center of this white cardstock to use on a future layout or to mat some photos. I do mat all of my photos with white cardstock or print them with a white border intentionally because I really like the way that that looks. I feel like it gives a big highlight to my photos. So getting my border in place, I'm going to go ahead and place my photos and get started. So I have these two super cute 3x4 photos of my twins, and I'm going to just slightly overlap them. And to make sure that they stay exactly where I want them, I am going to tape them together. So I just use a little bit of 1/4 inch double-sided tape right where they meet, and that makes me so happy because I can move the photos around on the background and they are going to stay exactly in the order and in the placement that I wanted them. Now bringing in the tiny puppy titles, I am going to add my title, which is My Sister, My Friend, and I really thought this was a really cool idea to line up the back of the words along the side of the top photo in a bit of a stacked title. And so it will go in and then out and then in and then out for my sister is longer, my friend is longer. So it looks kind of stair step going down, which I thought was a really cool effect. I'm also making sure that I'm not putting two of the same color next to each other, which can be a bit tricky with multicolored alphas, but I love the fact that these alphas have so many of each letter that I have gotten way more use out of them than I normally do multicolored alphas. It's been really, really nice to work with them. Now, initially, I started at the top. I should have started at the bottom because if you're going to have your title butt up against something, so against a photo, against a cluster, an element, anything like that, start where it's going to end and then move your way back out. So I'm starting at the photo, moving my way back out. But because I had a second photo at the bottom, that was going to be my lowest base. That's probably where I should have started because I end up moving things a little bit when I glued them all down. Now I do really love this title. I love the way that it mimics the way my photos are sort of stair-stepped. I just really love that aspect of this title. Now I did not put journaling on this page, and I may go back and add some on the back, but I didn't really have anything to say about these photos. I've already scrapped them for my twins' individual albums. This is for the family album. And so I'm not sure if I'm going to add journaling to this or not. I feel like I've already said what I needed to say on their layouts. This is just a couple of really cute photos that I definitely wanted in the family album as well. Now these are some Fussy Cut Frames. There is a pattern paper in the These Days collection that has these gorgeous frames. And I believe it's also in the A5 size as well, the little paper pad. And so I fussy cut a page of both. And I'm just tucking in some of the smaller frames that came from the A5 paper pad in around my photos for just an extra layer. These are a great base for clusters. What you're going to see on here is we're going to have 4 very simple clusters on this layout, and the base for 3 of them are these tiny frames. Now I do end up adding a 4th cluster in the apex on the right side where my 2 photos meet, and that's just because I wanted a bit of floral right there, and that's all I add. There's not a lot of space, so I didn't add a ton to it. But these are going to be some very simple clusters right around my photos, just to make sure the attention is on my photos and to add a little bit of spice nice and close to the photos, make them a little bit more whimsical. Now, of course, the wreath in the background, I want to add some florals to that, and I don't want to go crazy with the florals because then I'm going to be covering up this beautiful wreath in its entirety, and I don't want to do that. So using a mix of ephemera pieces, floral ephemera pieces, and some fussy cut florals from a patterned paper, I am going to go ahead and stagger a few florals around the outside, being mindful of the color patterns that I'm using, how often I'm using each color, trying to balance out the wreath as much as possible with color. And these little red flowers that I found in the fussy cut bag, I love these little red flowers, and I may have used them all. I don't know why, but lately I have been jiving for red in my scrapbooking, and there's not a lot of really beautiful, easy to use red, and the red in this collection is chef's kiss divine. I love the shade of red in this color. It's just not blood red, you know, and it's not in your face red. It's a very soft kind of fall feeling to it, but it's red, and I love that. I just like a burnt red. Is that a thing? Sienna maybe? I don't know, but it's beautiful. So creating my clusters here, again, keeping them super simple, because with this beautiful wreath in the background that has florals in it, it's unnecessary for me to add a ton of embellishment to this page. So what I'm choosing to do instead is to create a couple of floral clusters at the top and the bottom right, and then I'll have another smaller one at the left. Now at the bottom cluster, I don't want to compete with those 3 clusters. I just wanted a little extra something at the bottom. So it's just that little frame for now. I will add a little word phrase there as well. But these clusters are very simple, very easy to do, and by tucking them underneath of my photos, it makes sure I'm not competing with my photos. It also helps that there are a couple of colors in my photos that don't exist on the rest of the layout. And this is a technique that I call color avoidance. So I have used some of the soft pastel-y colors that are in my daughter's faces and in one of my daughter's clothes, but in the other one she's got a nice bright pink on, and that helps to draw your eye into the photos first, because that bright pink doesn't exist anywhere else on the layout. But because it's not an overwhelming color in the photos, it doesn't stand out so much that it makes the photos not blend in with the overall color scheme. It works together with the color scheme, but at the same time, because it's the only place you see that hot pink, it's the only place you're going to draw your eye immediately. And I want that to happen. I always want photos to have your focus first. So now that I've gotten my florals pretty much in place, I am going to go ahead and bring in my tonic glue pen, and I have had some requests for me to leave in more of the taping and the gluing. So on layouts like this that came together fairly quickly, because I did the paper piecing behind the cut file off camera, that was the longest part, honestly. I am going to go ahead and leave in some of this taping and gluing so you can see exactly what technique I'm using to get these things adhered. Now with these florals, I want the edges to stick up a little bit, gives them a little added texture and the appearance of dimension. And so I'm just adding glue in the very center of the florals and then sticking them down onto that white circle in between the leaves. Not on top of the leaves if I can help it, but mostly just on that white circle outline. Now I come in to each of the clusters, and I tend to start at the bottom. So I've grabbed the little frame out first, glued that down. Grabbed out my little floral, glued that down. Grabbed out the leaves, glued that down. And I just find working from the bottom works better for me. It helps me to see how the subsequent layers above it will fit in, because the chances that I'm going to get all of these pieces exactly where I put them initially is very low. It's extremely low. But by starting at the bottom, I can at least see the way my placement adapts as I'm gluing things down, and it helps me to make sure that the top pieces are overlapping where they should. So here I've got down to the third cluster and just adding in that, oh, I love those little fussy cut florals. I love those big clusters of leaves that were in the floral ephemera too. They add such flair to those clusters and I love it. Now, as a little added touch to this layout, I thought I'd bring in some of these little fabric hearts that are in the These Days collection as well. And the gold on them is divine. It's so beautiful. It's a nice brushed gold and it just blends beautifully with this color scheme. I tucked one into each of the floral clusters, but not to the frame at the bottom, because again, we're keeping that one really, really simple. Now bringing in my scattering, because I finish every layout with some scattering and splattering. And scattering is just adding the teeny tiny little detail bits that take the layout from nice to stunning to complete to, in my mind, the next level. And so what I'm doing is adding some puffy word phrases to each of the clusters, to each of the 4 clusters. They each get a puffy word phrase, and then some of these little puffy hearts as well around the outsides of the clusters. Now they didn't need a lot of fine details because we're going to be bringing in quite a bit of Nuvo Drops, which will do a lot of the same thing. So for the Nuvo Drops, I dropped a little bit of gold into each of the florals around the outside of the wreath, as well as any florals that had the centers sticking out from the photo. So this one here close to the bottom right apex of the 2 photos, that was sticking out. So I went ahead and added a little drop of gold there. Dotting it in a few more places when adding some Heidi Swap color shine around the outside, and this layout will be complete. I hope you've enjoyed this one, guys. Be sure to check out the blog at cocovanilla.com.au to see more detailed photos and a quick rundown on how this layout came together. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below, and until next time, bye y'all!